Okay, let's get started. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo Antaha Pravishya Mama Vacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjeevayati Akhila Shaktidhara Swadamna Anyam Stahastacharana Shravanatvagādīn Prana Namo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Lasatu Srimadananda Tirtendurno Hrudambare Yadvachas Chandrika Swanta Santapam Vinikrantati Padavakya Pramanagnan Pranamya Shirasa Gurun Vyakarishye Yatabhotam Vishnu Tattva Vinirnayam. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining part 23 of Katha Upanishad. So last week, we had a wonderful session on Ganesh Chaturthi and the philosophy of Ganesha. So on that occasion, we had an opportunity just to look at one verse. Ya imam madvadam Veda, atmanam jivamantikad, ishanam bhutabhavyasya, natato vijugupsate etadvaitat. Okay, so remember, we are in the second adhyaya. We are doing the first valli, and there are two more vallis to go here. So there are three vallis in the second adhyaya. And we are in the third boon, and Nachiketa has asked Yama, tell me about that supreme being. What is my relationship with him? What is the state of moksha? What is my own constitutional position in moksha? What is the greatness of Brahman in moksha? So these are all the contextual, arrangements for the second adhyaya, because our friend Nachiketa has been so enthusiastic and he's been asking questions after questions, and Yama has been giving him answer after answer. So this is a beautiful dynamics that is operating between a perfect guru and a perfect student. And when this happens, there is all sorts of knowledge that comes about. So this is the conversation that is happening, and the main focus of this conversation on the third boon, as we all know, is who is Brahman. Okay, we should never forget the contextual relevance of any Upanishads and whatever the concept that is being discussed at this point. Okay, so who is Brahman? So that is what Yama is answering. So last week he said, Ya imam madvadam Veda atmanam jivamantikat ishanam bhutabhavyasa natato vijugupsate. So in the previous week, Yama taught us that this person is Madvadam. He is Madhu Adam. You should know that Brahman as Madhu Adam. Ya imam Madhu Adam Veda. Know him as Madhu Adam. What is Madhu Adam? Madhu is Ananda, and Adam means he consumes Ananda. So that means all the punya karyas that you do, all the good deeds that you do, and all the actions that you do that takes you towards Shreyas, he likes it and he enjoys it. In fact, 90% of the time he enjoys his share of that Ananda is 90%, and he gives 10% to us, which becomes our punyas. Okay, so this person who does that for us, he is Jivamantikat. He is not some far away in a temple. He is actually right inside you. Antikat. He is very close to you. Jivamantikat. And who is that chap? Ishanam. He is your controller. Now, he has been your controller in the past, and he will also be your controller in the future. So that is the meaning of Ishanam Bhuta Bhavyasa. Bhuta is past, Bhavya is future. So he who knows that this Antaryaman is always inside him and protecting him and controlling him, when he knows that there is the supreme being who is controlling him, that person loses fear. And when he loses fear, there is nothing that he has to hide himself from or protect himself from, and he has taken the supreme shelter of the Supreme Lord. So that is why that verse, na tato vijugupsate, becomes interesting. So he runs about in this world carefree, in the sense that he is abhayam. He is not fearful of anybody, because the supreme being is protecting him and controlling him. So Yama here says, etadvaitat. So that person who is controlling you and protecting you right now in the samsara, is the same person who will control you and protect you even in the moksha sthiti. Etad is here, tat is that one. Okay, so the new verses that we are going to be doing today is, I want to do at least 4. Let's see how time takes us. Ya purvam tapaso jatam adbyaha purvam ajayata guham pravishya tishtantam yo bhutebir vyapashyata etadvaitat ya pranena sambhavati atitir devatamayi guham pravishya tishtantim yo bhutebir व्यजायत एतद्वैतत् अरण्यो निहितो जातवेदा गर्भ इव सुब्रुतो गर्भिणीभिः दिवे दिवे ईड्यो जागृवत्मिभिः हविष्मद्भिः मनुष्ये अग्निः एतद्वैतत् एतच्च उदेति सूर्यः अस्तं यत्र च गच्छति तं देवाः सर्वे अर्पिताः तदु नात्येति कश्चन एतद्वैतत्. Okay, look at these 4 mantras, all ending with etadvaitat, 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 etadvaitat. And Yama, in every mantra, he's saying etadvaitat, meaning he is emphasizing, he's stressing the fact that this Antaryaman who is here with you in samsara, he is also there in the moksha sthiti. And what is his status? That is what he is describing in these 4 mantras, all ending with etadvaitat. So let's look at the first mantra. Yaha purvam tapaso jatam adbyaha purvam ajayata guham pravishya tishtantam yo bhutebir vyapashyata etadvaitat. So here Yama is reminding us of the great creatorship of the Supreme Being. Okay, so let's look at this. And again, you're all very familiar with what I'm going to be discussing here. So we should be able to rapidly go through this. Okay, Yaha Purvam. So at the very beginning of creation. So even before creation, we know these words, right? Sarge and Agre. Agre is before creation. Sarge means in creation or after creation, during creation. So Agre, so that is what that means, Yaha Purvam. So who was there, Yaha Purvam? Brahman was there, the Supreme Being was there at the very beginning, even before creation. He was always a Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asid Ekameva Advitiyam, says the Chandogya Upanishad. Very important verse that talks about Sat Eva Somya Idam Agre Asid. Sat only was there. The Sat is this Brahman. He alone was there. So Yama reminds us here, Yaha Purvam. And then how did this creation come about? Ajatam Ajayata. So this is interesting. Ajatam. Ajatam means unborn. Okay. So unborn was born. So that is a little bit of puzzling. How can an unborn be born? Ajatam Ajayata. So that is talking about Chaturmukha. Basically saying Chaturmukha Brahma was created or he was born. From whom? Ajatam. Ajatam Ajayata. Okay, from the unborn was born Chaturmukha Brahma. Or the etymology there can be a plus ja. A we know is aha iti Brahma. So from Brahman's navel came the Chaturmukha Brahma. Is the rendering there. Ajatam Ajayata. The other thing about Chaturmukha Brahma is, and this is interesting, folks like us who are all ksharas, Chaturmukha Brahma is also a kshara, right? He has Mahat Tattva, has his body. But the beauty of Chaturmukha Brahma is he's got this Mahat Tattva as his body and he comes in creation and that's it. He's there. He doesn't have again and again birth and death and rebirth and death and rebirth. The kind of samsara cycles that we go through. Yeah, you and I go through the cycles of samsara. Although this Chaturmukha Brahma is in samsara, actually he doesn't have any death in the sense of how we go through. We shed our gross body and acquire a new one. Whereas Chaturmukha Brahma never acquires another body. He is there. He is Brahmakalpa is like trillions of years and he is there with this Mahat Tattva as his body. So that is also another meaning of ajatam, ajayata. Ajatam there means he is not reborn. He is born and he is there until the end of pralaya. Okay, so that is one interpretation there. So if you look at the sequence, it is perfectly in unison with all our understanding as to how the material world evolves. So Mahat is Chaturmukha, Ajatam, Ajayata. Then it says Tapaso Purvam. So tapas is a name of Rudra. Tapas is a name of Shiva. In fact, we all know that Shiva has done great penance, and he is renowned for doing tapas for 1,000 years in a sea, in a salt ocean. And those are all the things that we learn from Puranas. In fact, he is also called Ugra Tapas, and that is the name of Shiva or Rudra. So here he says Tapasa Purvam. That is, even before Rudra was born, he was there. Who? Our Supreme Brahman was there. Adhabhya Purvam. Adhabhya, you know, Adbhya means water. So water means what? You can talk about your Panchabhutas, but you can also talk about all the Abhimani Devatas. And I've kind of summarized all this here for you, and you're all very familiar with this. So Adbhyaha Purvam. So even before Devatas were created. So when you understand this, even before Devatas were created, even before Rudra came into creation, even before Chaturmukha Brahma came into creation, this chap was there. Yaha Purvam. Yeah. And also what is important here for us to understand is Guham Pravishya Tishtantam. So even in these beings, that is these Devatas, the Rudra, the Chaturmukha Brahma, Guham Pravishya Tishtantam. He is inside them as their Antaryamin. Yeah, and we know this important sutra of Veda Vyasa that talks about Antaryami. And then there is this Antaryami Brahmanam of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that we have discussed a few times. So we have to have all those ideas in our mind when we are looking at this verse. Guham Pravishya Tishtantam. So why is that he is Guham Pravishya Tishtantam? Then again, we know from our Taittiriya Upanishad verse that everything that he creates, he pervades and enters into it and gives it its reality, objecthood of knowledge, and ability of volition, and so on. So Tadeva Anupravishate is an important verse of Taittiriya Upanishad. So we need to bring that here and understand that this creator, whose great creatorship is such that he existed before all other things came into being, but at the same time, anything that he creates, he also pervades this. And in jivas, including Chaturmukha downwards, including you and me, what is there? Guham Pravishya Tishtantam. He is inside us as our Antaryami. Okay, so note the word Tishtantam, and I just want you to remember this Tishtantam, which is interesting, and I'll come to it later during the talk. Tishtantam is in masculine. Okay, Guham Pravishya Tishtantam. Yo bhutebir vyapashyata etad vaitat. Okay, so hold on to that verse. We'll come to that next. Yo bhutebir vyapashyata. So Guham Pravishya Tishtantam, who in all the bhutas, Yo bhutebir vyapashyata. So he's sitting in all the bhutas, and he's also looking at them and as their silent witness, making note of all the karmas that they are doing. He can see, the Antaryaman inside us can see what we are doing, but we are not able to see him at this point. Yeah, and we as the lowest of the low jivas, we are not able to see him. But our Antaryami Brahmanam of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also says even the exalted Tattva Abhimani Devatas like Chaturmukha, Rudra, Indra, and so on, they also do not know him fully. Although they are Aparoksha Jnanis, they also do not know him fully. Yaha Prithvyam Tishtan Prithvya Antare Yam Prithvi Naveda Yasya Prithvi Shariram Yaha Prithvi Rantaro Yamayati Eshata Atma Antaryami Amrutaha. So there are 21 mantras in this Antaryami Brahmanam that talks about this Antaryamitva of Brahman. Yo Atmani Tishtan. There is also another verse where even us He's inside us as our Antaryamin. So these are all key verses of our Vedas and Upanishads. And as you know, this is the Apaurushaya text on the source of supreme authority. And when it says there is the Atma and there is an Antaryamin, the Atma does not know the Antaryamin, whereas the Antaryamin knows the Atma all the time. Yo bhute bir vyapashyata. From where is he seeing all this? Guham pravishya tishtantam. So that fellow is etadvai tat. In your samsara state, he is inside you as your silent witness and making a note of all the things you're doing. And at the same time, in moksha, he is there in your as your antaryamin and observing all the things that you're doing even in moksha. So that is a reminder from Yama to Nachiketa about this antaryamitva, but also bringing in the concept of creatorship in this verse. Next one is also very, very interesting. It's even more interesting. So what does the next verse says? Yaha pranena sambhavati atitir devatamayi guham pravishya tishtantim yo bhutepir vajayata etadvaitad. So this is a slightly different twist. And I want you to be thinking about this verse because I have some discussions coming up in the next slide. So what does it say? Atitir Aditi Devata Mai. Okay, so here Yama says, you know that chap whom I've just told you as your Antaryaman, the Vedas also celebrate him as Aditi. Okay, so I've got a small little question here. What do we think that Aditi here is? We are all familiar with Aditi, right? Aditi. And who is that Aditi that we know of? And this Aditi is slightly different, but I just want folks to remind us here, the famous Aditi. Who is the Aditi that we are all familiar with? Who wants to take that question, please?
It's the mother of Devas, no? Mother of all the Devas.
Yeah, absolutely right, Deval. Thank you, Pratibhaji. Thank you very much. So Aditi and Kashyap.
Yeah, you say, is it? Oh, sorry. Is it
Yeah, sorry,
Daksha
Neetaji, go on.
Prajapati's daughter Aditi and Aditi?
Diti
Yeah,
gave rise
Aditi
to the
and
Daityas.
Daityas.
Yeah, and
Diti
yeah,
gave rise to
Aditi,
Daityas and
yeah,
Aditi to all the
Devas.
Devas.
yeah, correct. So there is that Aditi that we are familiar with. But remember, all these people get their names because the Supreme Brahman, it is his original name. He's got infinite names and all others derive their names from him. And this is a classic example of that. Aditi. So here he says, Yo pranena sambhavati aditir devatamai. So he says, Yama, this is very, very interesting and cryptic. And here Yama says, you know that Antaryamin is Aditi Devatamai. And look at this here, Guham Pravisha Tishtantim. Tishtantim is in feminine. So Yama is now in the previous verse, he said that this Supreme Antaryamin in the masculine gender. But here he describes the same Antaryamin in the feminine gender. Yeah, Aditi Devata Mai. Devata Mai means this is the grandmother of all the gods. Devata Mai. And who is that? That person is Aditi. Okay, in the previous verse, he spoke about creation, right? He spoke about how he was there, and even before this, Chaturmukha, Rudra, and all the Devatas came in, he was always there, but he brought them all into creation, and he was there, Guham Pravishya Tishtantam. He was inside them as their Antaryama. Now he says, once these chaps have had their career, and when the universe is coming to an end, this chap is still there. This guy is still there. And this Antaryamin, the Supreme Brahman, is now called Aditi. Yeah, Aditi. So this is very interesting. It is a Strilinga Pada. Aditi means, what is the etymology of Aditi there? Aditi is Ati iti Aditi. Ati means that which eats. That which eats. So Atiti, we know Atiti, right? So who wants to tell us what does Atiti mean? Who is an Atiti?
Guest.
Guest. Thank you, Manjunaji. So guest, what kind of guest?
Uninvited.
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 Uninvited guest. And what is his nature? Has he been to McDonald's and he comes home, or he comes home very hungry?
Hungry, very hungry.
Very hungry. Thank you, Manjunaji. Anybody else wants to answer that? Do we all agree with Manjunaji? Yeah, Pratibha?
I just felt that one who comes without titi, without telling.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
Pratibha. Perfect answer. 100% yes. But also, as Manjunath said, this chap will turn up not in a titi, but atiti. He comes just without giving any notice. But this bugger is very, very hungry. And he also eats a lot. Okay, that is why he is also called Atiti. And he is called Atiti because Ati iti Atiti. Okay, he eats. This fellow is hungry and he comes and says, please feed me. I've just come and I'm very hungry. Okay, so in fact, that is the idea there. When you say Aditi, Ati iti Aditi is the etymology. And in fact, Veda Vyasa has done a sutra on this. Atta chara chara grahanat. Atta, that Brahman is called Atta. Atta means that which eats. Chara achara. What does he eat? Charatmaka prapancha and acharatmaka prapancha. That is all the sentient souls as well as the non-sentient entities. This Brahman eats them in pralaya. Okay, so that is why he is called Aditi. And he is called Devatamayi. Okay, now here is another quiz. So if you remember the sequence from the previous slide, let me go to the previous slide. So when we go to the, so when we go to this previous slide of creation, there is the Mula Prakriti, right? Whose Abhimani is Lakshmi. And then she differentiates into three, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So who is going to tell us about what aspect is Shri, what aspect is Bhu, and what aspect is Durga in this, and what does, which component of these three plays a role in destruction of the universe? Who is going to take that one? It's a bit of a difficult question. Okay.
So is it Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Suresh. But which aspect of the Shri Tattva actually is involved in the destruction of the universe?
Tamas.
Durga,
Sorry?
no?
Tamas, the Durga.
Durga, thank you. Yes, perfect answer. So the Durga aspect of Lakshmi is also involved in the destruction. And inside, who is making this Durga also to do the destruction? It is this Brahman who is actually prompting all this. So it is from that perspective also, he is called Aditi. Ati, he consumes, he eats, and he destroys the whole universe, and he sort of puts them all in his mouth and they go into his womb again. So in fact, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad actually gives a definition of who Aditi is. Yeah, and this is, again, I am not tired saying that this is the beauty of, understanding the Upanishads rather than plucking words. Because when you do this kind of research, everything falls into place beautifully. So look at this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Sa adyat yeva asrujata tattad attum adriyata sarvam va atti iti tad aditer adititvam sarvasya Yetasya atta bhavati sarvam asya annam bhavati ya evam etad aditer adititvam Veda. So beautiful language, Vedic language there, but it gives you a full explanation and etymology of who Aditi is. Aditi is that which eats. So who eats? Brahman eats. He is Janmadhyasya Yataha, as we know, the second definition. Janmadhyasya Yataha means what? Eightfold dispensation of the world of matter and souls, which includes creation, maintenance, destruction, sustenance, etc. So the destruction of the universe is what is being discussed here. Okay. And in fact, our Guru Yama has actually spoken about this at the end of the first adhyaya. Yasya brahma cha kshatram cha ube bhavata odanaha mrityurasya upasechanam ka itta veda yatra saha. You may remember this verse. And here he says, this Yama is very humble. He says, who am I to know about all this greatness of this Brahman? Even for Chaturmukha Brahma and others, if you look at a plate on a banana leaf, they are like small little morsel of food that he eats. I am like a pickle. They are like morsel of food. Who am I in this grand scheme of things? Because he eats all of us at the end of Pralaya. So those kind of ideas should come to our mind, because we not only have to look for external evidence, but also go and look back in the first Adhyaya, what Yama has also described, because all that the second Adhyaya is doing in Katha Upanishad is reinforcing all the concepts that have been discussed in the first Adhyaya. And I also told you about this very famous verse in Taittiriya Upanishad, where the Chaturmukha Brahma who has achieved moksha, not the current Chaturmukha, but the previous Kalpa's Chaturmukha who is in moksha, he actually does a mantra, and Taittiriya Upanishad documents that. What does that Chaturmukha says? Ahamannam, ahamannam, ahamannam. I am the food for this Brahman. I am the food for this Brahman. And he celebrates Aham annadaha, aham annadaha, aham annadaha. So there's a beautiful mantras in Taittiriya Upanishad that actually talks about this Aditi. So how does this person, this Aditi, does the destruction of the universe? Now, that there is an important other word that I have not discussed yet. Okay, yo pranena sambhavati. So every activity that this Brahman does, he always has this prana. The prana, that there is an entity called prana that is always with him. Okay, Mukhya Prana as it's called. So you can go and do some research as to who Mukhya Prana is, who's Chaturmukha Brahma is, and so on. So all the activities of the universe, yes, Brahman is the supreme controller, but he has assistants who go about doing it. So here he talks about this assistant who is called Prana, who is also called Mukhya Prana, who does it on behalf of Lakshmi and Narayana. He does it. Yo pranena sambhavati atitir aditi devatar mahi. Okay, so that particular sentence is a bit of a tongue twister, but anyway, the key idea there is aditi. And see the next one, guham pravishya tishtantim. Okay, so these are all important concepts that we need to take it from here. So why am I saying this? So this is where I want to open for today's discussion, because in the first verse he said guham pravishya tishtantam. In the next verse he says guham pravishya tishtantim. Okay, and then here he is given the name as a female name to the god as Aditi. Okay, whereas in previous he has given so many other names. So this is supreme. So this is what I want to open and get ourselves to think about these ideas of the Vedas and the Rishis. How do they approach this? Is our Veda patriarchal, or is it matriarchal, or is it democratic? How is our Vedic Rishis and how do our Vedas celebrate the supreme Brahman? Is he a guy, a male with a long beard? Is that Brahman? Some male figure with a long beard, is he Brahman? Or who is the Brahman of the Vedas? So you may remember that over the last several months, we have discussed Supreme Brahman in various names. We are given Pullinga. Pullinga is masculine. Purusha, we all very familiar with Purusha, Purushottama, Purusha Shukta, and so on. So Pullinga. Strilinga, here we have said Aditi. But remember, Napumsakalinga, that is neutral gender, Brahman. I like to always denote supreme as Brahman, because Brahman is not a masculine word. Brahman is not a feminine word. It is actually a neutral gender, Napumsakalinga. So our Vedas describe the supreme as Purusha or Dhanvantri, Aditi or Mohini or Brahman. So who is the supreme Brahman of the Vedas? Is he male, is he female, or is he both, or is neither? So what is our view here? So who wants to start off the discussion? Is Brahman, is supreme God male or female? Suresh.
It's all of the above.
Okay, Pratibhaji says all of the above. Okay, Suresh.
He is all of the above and none of the above.
Okay, why none of the above, Suresh?
I mean, in the sense, it's the way one you contemplate that. He is that. If he is a male, then he's not a human. you can contemplate in any way. I mean, he's called a neutral, he's addressed as a neutral gender. So he's neither a male nor a female. Or he could be addressed as a male, he could be addressed as a female. He's in fact described as the father who bears the child. So I guess it's all of the above. And
yeah, great. Thank you, Suresh. That's interesting. He is a father who is father of his child. Yeah, excellent. Devalji. Okay, so Javel is, I don't know where she is. So Pragnesh.
Sorry, I was going to ask a question. Sorry, the answer to the question is he's also described as Ardhanarishwar. So I think you've not got it on the slide. He's both. But my question to you is Linga a quality of material selves? Or is it a metaphysical guna?
Yeah, okay,
Is
yeah.
a question to answer your question.
Yeah, interesting thoughts. Pragnesh ji, you had raised your hands.
I vaguely remember we started sometime saying that when to understand, we need to understand what it is not. So I would go with the word that none of the above is beyond,
Okay.
beyond. Ajanma no loka. So neither born, not, so it has no attributes like this, and still possible, like we also learned about this Mana Sutra Gada. So though is bind all the beads, but has nothing to do with the beads, like a catalyst in chemical reaction.
Thank you, Pragnesh. Interesting thoughts. Jagadish?
Well, we say Bhagavanta is neither created nor destroyed, or it's like a form of energy. So when we call a form of energy, I see what Mr. Sureshji is also saying. He's neither created or nor destroyed, or he could be all of the above or none of the above. So that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So beautiful ideas and quite a diverse view that's coming out in our group. So all of us are right, I think, in one form or the other. So if you look at our Vedic texts, if you look at our Vedas, even in Gita and in the Sutra and various Puranas, the Supreme Brahman, of course, he's got infinite names, but you will see sometimes he is addressed in masculine, sometime in feminine, and as I said, sometime in neutral. So who is he and what is he? What is his gender? Okay, that is the first question. The second bigger question that Devalji has asked is, who has gender? You know, does a male and a female body, is that the gender? Or from a Vedic philosopher's perspective, the concept of gender is entirely different. Okay, so I got an answer that I wanted to share with you all. But before I go into that, does anybody have a view on this? Who has gender? Do souls have gender is the first question, or the body that they are traveling in, that body has the gender? Which one has got the gender?
Jivas have their own gender. So there are male jivas and female jivas.
Okay, so Sushruth is absolutely clear on this. So Deval and Suresh briefly interjected, and then you have Pragnesh. Yeah.
I agree with it's the jivas that have the gender.
Yeah. Okay. So I presume Deval is also in concurrence with that.
I think, I don't know, I'm coming from a very psychiatric perspective. I think both have a gender, and when that isn't, so the physical body also has a gender, the jiva also has a gender, and when there is a mismatch, we have a lot of issues. That is where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that's a very pragmatic and a very reasonable view. Yes, thank you, Devaji. So the primary view of the Vedas and of our Sanatana Dharma, of course, is so Deval, if you think about it, if somebody passes away and there is a dead body, whether it is a male or a female, now that dead body, do you think has got a gender? So it's just something for us to think about, because that body is only made of Panchabhutas. It is just made of space, air, the space and air, it's not in the sense that the air is not there, it is not breathing, but at least the three other things that you can see, that is water and earth, they're clearly there in that dead body. So, but that is a non-sentient thing. The dead body is a non-sentient thing at that point. And if you break the dead body and if you burn it, all that you see is ashes. The ashes don't have they don't have any sex. They are not male or female. So that is one of the views. Rishi's deepest view is non-sentient things, jadas or matter, cannot have a gender. And the gender primarily belongs to a sentient entity, which is the soul, which is the jiva that bears the gender. But as Devalji also mentioned, when the jiva occupies a body that has a slightly different predisposition, then only things get a little bit confused. Yeah, but primarily what happens, a male jiva gets into a physical body that has certain characteristics that perform certain function. And those functions are aligned to the swabhava of the jiva that is occupying that body. And that is how we conduct our lives. So yeah, keep thinking about this. It's an interesting problem. And our Vedas, how do you, why, if somebody asks me, why do you say that only jivas have sex, but not bodies? And there are lots of evidences within the Apaurusha Veda that talks about, for example, Chandogya Upanishad will say that in moksha sthiti, there are male and female jivas. They are running around in chariots, they're playing, they're having lots of fun, they're singing, dancing, and they're also singing Vedas and stuff like that. So it talks about, Vedas talk about these kind of things that actually in moksha sthiti, there are male and female souls. But in moksha sthiti, there is no material body. So this is all taken as evidences as to what is the Vedic view as to who has the sex. So if you go with me on this one, and if you accept that souls have a particular gender, certain souls have a certain attribute and a swabhava, and that swabhava, you could group them together and say that this indicates a masculine predisposition. And there are some souls with certain swabhavas, and they do certain things that we as a society say that this is a female attribute, a female type of actions. Okay, so if you take that view, then the idea there is this Supreme Brahman is an Antaryamin in all the jivas, right? So one view there is, in a male jiva, he exists in the male form, and in the female jivas, he exists in the female form. And when I say Napumsakalinga, neutral gender, Brahman, for example, is neutral gender. Why do we say that? So look at the etymology of Brahman, and we have done this a million times. But the essential definition is Brahman is one who has infinite auspicious attributes and is devoid of all defects. So we call him as Napumsakalinga because he is devoid of all defects that one can see in a female soul and one can see in a male soul. He doesn't have any of those defects. You and me, we have millions, trillions of defects. He doesn't have those things. So when I say Napumsakalinga in Shastra's perspective, Napumsaka means not that he is asexual, that Brahman is asexual. No, that is not the meaning. It just means that he doesn't have the defects of a male jiva, and he doesn't have the defects of a female jiva. So think about this. So my feeling, he is all of the above, and it depends on where he is. He is everywhere. He is all pervasive. And if he's in a male jiva, he is a Purusha. And if he is in a female jiva, he becomes an Aditi. And Deval is also right in the material body. So when you look at the material coverings of the soul, and that we have done 72,000 nadis, if you may remember, 36,000 on one side and 36,000 on the right side. Now, Shastras tell us in every body, irrespective of whether it is a male or a female that is occupying that body, the Supreme Brahman exists in two forms, 36,000 forms in a female form and 36,000 forms in a male form, where the concept of Ardhanarishwara comes in. So the primary Ardhanarishwara, yes, right, and that is in the material body, and that starts off with our Brahman Vishnu. Chaturmukha also has Ardhanarishwara form, and then Shiva also has an Ardhanarishwara form. Shiva's Ardhanarishwara form is celebrated quite a lot in the Puranas. Whereas the Ardhanarishwara form of Mukhya Prana and Chaturmukha and also of Vishnu or Brahman is celebrated more in the Upanishads and the Vedas. So they all have the Ardhanarishwara form. So I hope you find this interesting, because that is what Yama is wanting us to think about. Look, he has used these languages, Tishtantim and Tishtantam, in feminine and masculine gender, for us to think about these kind of ideas. And Yama is talking about male and female forms of the Supreme. Okay, so moving on. So yo pranena sambhavati. So how does the Supreme Brahman accomplish all these deeds? And in Vishnu Sahasranama, there is a very famous verse, Varado Vayu Vahana. Okay, and then the Varado Vayu Vahanaha. Vayu is that Mukhya Prana. So there is a view, at least from certain schools of Vedanta, with the evidence from Vishnu Sahasranama, that this Vishnu or Brahman, he uses this vehicle called this Vayu or Mukhya Prana and accomplishes all the other things of the universe through this Mukhya Prana entity, which Yama talks about here. Yo pranena sambhavati aditir devata mahi guham pravishya tishtantim yo bhutebir vyajayata etadvaitad. So it is that is that entity who is here doing this, and will also be doing this in moksha sthiti. So we are making extremely good progress here for today's class. My next verse is again one of my favorite verses of Katha Upanishad. And it goes like this. And he goes on again. Yama is celebrating this person. So you get this antaryamitva. The theory is there, but how do we, you and me, who are doing this satsang for the past almost 3 years now, how are we going to get this knowledge? How are we going to understand and know that there is an antaryamin inside us? What is that process of knowing the Supreme? Yeah, and here Yama gives a beautiful metaphor. I love it. So it's an amazing metaphor, and let's spend some time, finish today's talk talking about this. So he says, Aranyo nihito jataveda garbha iva subruto garbiribihi dive idyo jagruvadbihi havishmadbihi manushyebir agnihi etadvaitad. So he says, Aranyo nihito jataveda. Okay, jataveda, many of you would be very familiar. Jataveda literally means fire. Yeah, jataveda in a mukhya vritti means fire, agni, fire. Yeah, Aranyo nihito, aranyo. So in the Vedic times, and this tells you, these verses tell you how the rishis used to do their upasana. How would they do their fire sacrifice? They would generate fire using this aranya. So aranyo nihito. So aranya is an instrument where you might have seen in National Geography, for example, that you have 2 sticks. And so you have these 2 sticks, and you rub the top stick with the bottom, and you create a friction, and you have this wood fibers here, and in that friction heat is generated and fire comes out. Yeah, aranyo nihito jataveda. So that is what Yama is telling. So look how you guys are doing in Mrityu Loka, how you are doing generating this fire. Think about that problem of you use this top end, there is a wood, and bottom there is a wood, and there is a fiber. And in fact, our Vedas talk about you can't generate fire from any random wood. Does anybody know which wood is used or was used in the Vedic time to generate fire? That's a quiz.
Is it Summit?
Yeah, which wood is used, Harish?
I heard it referred to as Summit. I don't know if that means the wood or just the type of
Samiti is just Samit is just sticks. That is sticks you put into the fire. Yeah, and if you're a student, you will go to the forest and get all the sticks and wood for putting it into the fire. Pragnesh.
Aswastha.
Well done, fantastic, 100%. So Ashwatha. So a special type of Ashwatha tree, even that Ashwatha tree, the Vedas describe there is a special type of Ashwatha tree, not any Ashwatha tree. Okay, so you can do a research about this. So there is a special type of Ashwatha tree that is used to make fire. Okay, so this is, in Vedic times it is there, but I was just Googling to see which other civilizations use the same approach. And I realized that many of the African tribes, men and women, still do this. They also use Aranyo Nihito Jataveda. Mexicans, the Inca civilization also used to do the same thing, Aranyo Nihito Jataveda. And our Vedic rishis were also doing the same thing, Aranyo Nihito Jataveda. Yeah, so I hope you find this interesting, because Yama is such an exalted guru and a scholar. He's not just going to be, yes, this is interesting about how fire was generated, but is that all that Yama is talking about? No, there is an underlying philosophy behind this. What does that mean? So look at Aranya. You need to look at what Aranya is. Aranya means Arani. Arani means Aryate and Rana. Rana means Vedas. The group of Vedas are called Ranas. Aryate, he who knows the Veda is called Aryate. In fact, Arya, so we all know Arya, right? Aryan civilization, Arya, which is a very popular word. And the Arya comes as he who is an elderly, knowledgeable person. He who knows, he who is a knowledgeable person is called Arya. So Aryate, what does he know? He knows the Vedas. So what does that mean? Aranyo Nihito Jataveda means there are two fellows here who are Aranyas. They know something about the Vedas and they are churning, they are having a discussion. So this wood, for example, could be a guru, and this wood here is a Shishya. So both these guys have a certain knowledge about the Vedas. And what are they doing? They are churning that wood. They're having this discussion, dialogue, and debate and clarifying doubts, and they're very actively doing this. They're forcefully doing this discussion for what? Jata Veda. Here it is for fire, but here what? To know about this Jata Veda. So again, that Parama Mukhya Vritti is Jata Veda is the name of the Supreme. Jatam Jatam Veti Iti Jata Veda. That means Jatam Jatam means this chap knows everything about that he has created. Jatam Jatam Veti Jata Veda, i.e. meaning he is Sarvajna, he is omniscient being. And how do we get the knowledge of that particular all-knowing Supreme Brahman? By doing Aranyo Nihito Jata Veda. Who are those Aranyos? Guru and Sishyas. They are churning the Vedas. And as you churn the Vedas, what happens is that knowledge about this Jata Veda, the knowledge about the Supreme Brahman evolves. And how does that knowledge about the Supreme Brahman evolve? And Yama again gives a beautiful metaphor there. Garbha eva subruto garbini bihi. So he says, as a lady goes through pregnancy from month 1 to month 9, how the womb, you know that the baby inside is growing. How do you know that the baby is growing? By actually observing her womb, the size of her tummy is increasing. Her abdominal girth increases from month 1 to month 9. As the girth increases, you know that there is a baby that is growing inside and that her pregnancy is getting matured, and eventually the baby will come out and you will see it. And similarly, the more you do this the Aranyo Nihito Jata Veda, Guru and the Sishya, they discuss and gain knowledge about this Jata Veda, you will get that idea that eventually you will get to know about this Brahman. The knowledge of the Brahman is going to increase until one point when the delivery happens, you will have Shakshatkar. You will have a Shakshatkara. You become an Aparoksha Jnani and you will actually see the baby that's come out. Right now, you know only how your knowledge is increasing, but one day you will actually see the baby. And that is the idea that our Yama in this beautiful verse talks about this Aranyo Nihito Jataveda Garbha Eva Subrito Garbhinevi Dive Dive Idyaha. Okay, so that means what? Dive Dive means Diva means what? Day. The English word day comes from the Sanskrit word Diva. Yeah, so no surprises there. So Dive Dive Idyaha. So how do this Guru and Sishya, they churn this Vedas, they churn this wood called Vedas? How do they do that? Every day they do it. Constantly, every day, 24 hours a day, that they have to do this. Idyaha. Worship, dive dive idyaha, worship every day. Okay, How do you do it? Jagravadbihi havishmadbihi. So by Jagravadbihi means Jagravadbihi means knowledge. You're awake. You're awake and you're reading and so on. So that is a metaphor for knowledge. And havishmadbihi. Havishmadbihi is what? You're doing this havish, a havan, a homa, and you're doing throwing various things in the havan, which is a kind of an action. So karma, yeah, jnana and karma. Manushyebihi, Manushya there means mananashilaha, thinking, deep contemplation, meditation, and so on. So when you do that, so you worship every day with knowledge and karma, and you do your contemplation about whom? This Agni. Okay. So again, it's hugely metaphorical. This Agni of the fire sacrifice is your ordinary Agni, but we all know, we have done this before. Agni, also the etymology of Agni, one simple definition I put here. I got another slide before finishing today's talk, talking about who that Agni is. Okay, so here, like how Aditi is Atti iti Aditihi, similarly Atti iti Agnihi. And there is no surprise there. This fire consumes everything. Whatever you throw at it, it'll eat and it'll destroy it. Similarly, this Brahman at the end of this creation will consume everything. So that is the idea there about Agni. Atti iti Agni. Okay. So now I've got a question here so that I can have a minute's break. Why is fire the most suitable symbol for contemplation of Brahman? Because that is what Yama is leading us. Think about this Agni, think about this Agni. So there is, before we go into the etymology of the word Agni, let us think about why we as the practitioners of Sanatana Dharma actually use fire as the most suitable symbol for contemplation of Brahman. There are many other religious traditions like Zoroastrianism, Judaism, and even the Catholicism uses fire as a symbol of the supreme. And our Vedic system for eons has always considered fire as the most suitable symbol for the contemplation of Brahman. So who wants to take that one? Kavita ji says purity. Very good. Thank you, Kavita ji. Anybody else?
Madhu Suresha, is it Agni because it's that element which cannot be contaminated? I mean, it consumes everything. I mean, that's something which can't be contaminated. And also as a practical symbol of light, if we think Bhagavan as the Jnanananda Swarupa, so for those two reasons, perhaps Agni becomes the mode of worship.
Yeah, beautiful, Suresh. Yeah, amazing. You captured so many important points. So we'll go to Pragnesh and then come to Jagdish. Pragnesh.
Also, Urdhvagami, the Jwala always going upwards.
Yeah, beautiful. Yes. So it's always looking up. Urdhva Mukha. Yeah, excellent. Jagdish ji.
It's also I think so. You mentioned about Aga plus Ni. Again, it just takes you, that moves from darkness to the light, from the unknowledge to the knowledgeable. So that kind of the node to the abode. Yeah, knowing
beautiful.
that.
Thank you, Jagdish. Excellent. So we all of us captured all the points. So who is that Agni? Is it material Agni or fire? Or is it somebody else? And we have always understood in this forum that there is nothing material that is being discussed in the Vedas. It's always a sentient component. And who are those sentient components of Agni? And again, we have discussed this before. Pradhana Agni, Agni Devata, he is the 15th rank. Kala Agni Rudra, he is the 5th rank. Prana Agni, he is the 3rd rank. Chaturmukha, 3rd rank. Kala Agni Durga, that is also discussed in the Vedas. She is the 2nd rank. And then there is this Agni Narayana, who is the 1st rank. Okay. So the question there is, which Agni is Yama is discussing here? So as you look at this beautiful mantra, Aranyo Nihito Jata Veda Garbha Iva Subruto Garbini Bihi Dive Dive Idyaha Jagruvadbihi Havishmadbihi Manushyebihi Agnihi Etadvaitat. So he makes it very clear that Agni is Etadvaitat, that Agni that is worshipped, that is inside you, and he will also be inside you in moksha sthiti. Etad vai, who, etad, that which is here very close to you is also the one that is going to be there in moksha sthiti. So here Yama is taking us into an entirely different angle about who Agni is. Yeah, definitely not the material Agni, definitely not the Pradhana Agni. And all the things that he has celebrated Brahman. So you should always think about the context in which Upanishads are talking about names. In that context, in that prakarana, it is the Brahman that is being discussed here. So I want to finish today's class with this one. And, you know, we all know that Rig Veda is the oldest text of mankind. Yeah. And we have to, if Rig Veda really is the oldest text of mankind, then you need to ask the question, why is the very first word spoken in that oldest text of mankind Agni? So Agni Mile. Okay. So what I want to do is, I hope this inspires you, but this mantra inspires me every time. So hopefully my desire here is, once we do Katha Upanishad, we should spend a month or two thinking about Agni Sukta, which is the very first Sukta of Rig Veda. So I want to play this YouTube Agni Sukta first, and then remind ourselves who this Agni is. I hope the internet works. Let me have a go at this.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Agnimela Purohitam Yajnasya Devamritvidam Hotaram Ratnadhatamam Agnif Purve Rishabhiredyo Notanairuta Sadevam Ehamakshate Agnina Bhajivashnabhatposhameva Dive Dive Yashasam Veeravattamam Agnejay Yajnamadharam Vishvatah Paribhorase Sa iddeveshu gacchate Agnirahota Pavitratvas Satyaschitrashavastamaha Devo Devebhiragamata Yadangadasu Shettvamagre Bhadram Karishyase Tavetat Satyamangiraha Upatvagne Dive Dive Dosha Avastarthida Bhajam Namo Bharanta Emase Rajandamadharanam Gopamritasya Dedivim Vardhamanam Smedame Sanaf Videva Sonavegne Sopajano Bhava Sajasmanasvastaje.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that Agni Sukta. It's just an inspirational Sukta here, and you might have heard some frequent words there that we have just done. Dive Dive, Idyaha, Agnihi. So what Yama has used some of the words, you will see this Dive Dive, Idyaha, all scattered around Agni Sukta. And this Agni Sukta, and it is our sacred duty to burst this bubble, because there are some ignorant people out there who think our Vedic rishis were just looking at these natural things and they were worshipping all the natural things that were happening. It is not that the supreme being they were worshipping in Agni Sukta or Indra Sukta or whatever other Sukta. It is their own ignorance, because the Agni that is worshipped by who is, okay, here is a question somebody may want to answer this. Who is the Rishi who is actually seeing the Agni Sukta of Rig Veda? So who has seen this? Who is the seer of this mantra? Agni Sukta mantra. Anybody wants to take that?
Is it Madhuchandra, Vishwamitra's son?
Thank you, Shilaji. Wonderful. Madhuchanda Vaishwamitraha, who is Vishwamitra's son. And what did Vishwamitra compose? Who wants to take that? We have done this in this forum. What did Vishwamitra compose? Which is again a great Gayatri. So Vishwamitra Gayatri, which is the celebration of the sun. As Surya Narayana, who is inside, Vishwamitra gave us the Gayatri. And his son, Madhuchanda Vaishwamitra, he gives us the Agni Sukta, which is the very first Sukta of the Rig Veda. So this Agni should not be underestimated. Our Sanatana Dharma and Vedic philosophy does not talk about some material Agni, because our rishis were not cavemen worshipping fire. Yeah, give me a break. If some people think that, it is their profound ignorance. Because the Agni that is discussed by Madhuchanda Vaishwamitra, no less he is the son of Vishwamitra, cannot be some material Agni. It has to be something else. So Acharya Madhva in his Rig Bhashyam actually gives us the etymology. When you recite the Agni Sutra, what is that spirit in which you have to recite this? Agni Shabdo Ayam Agra Eva Abhipujyatam Agrayatvam Agra Netrutvam Attim Anganga Netrutam. So this is the definition of Agni. So what does that mean? So let us take this simple. I think Jagadish Ji was mentioning that Agani. What is the etymology of Agni? Agni. You separate it into Agani. Ga means Gamayati, Gachati. Okay, so it's something that moves, something that has volition. That is Ga, Gamayati, Gachati, and all that. Aga means something which is inert. The opposite of ga is aga. Okay, so for something that is inert, this is the niyati. It gives volition. So it gives volition to all inert entities in existence. That is called Agani. So if you think about in Pralaya, everything is in suspended animation. We know even the material, Sattva, Rajas, Tama is in equilibrium. All the jivas are there in that Sushupti state in Pralaya, complete inactivity. And then what happens to them? They all come into existence. So this Supreme Brahman brings them into creation and gives them their volition and everything else. And that is why he is called Agani. And if you look at the first verse, Agra Shabdo, Ayam Agra Eva Abhipujyatam, Agre Niyati, which means the very first to be adored. The Supreme Brahman is the greatest being that we have to adore. Agre Niyati iti Agnihi. Agrayatvat Agnihi, the first and the foremost of all. He is the Purushottama. So Agrayatvat Agrihi. Agre Nayati. He is the prime mover of all. If he was not there inside me as my Antaryaman, nothing was ever going to happen. Okay. Attim, he is a devourer of all in Pralaya. So Attim. Angam Nayati, he is the activator of all bodies of all beings. Agam Nayati, activator of all, or else they remain inert. So those are all the ideas that we need to get when we look at this Madhuchanda Vaishwamitra's Agni Shukta. Okay, so if one take-home message that we've all heard today is, our Rishi Madhuchanda Vaishwamitra was not a caveman sitting somewhere and running around fire. No, his view as described in the Agni Sukta is something very profound. Yeah, and that is why we should be very, very proud of our heritage, because Rig Veda, the oldest text, and in that oldest text, the very first word is Agni. And that is what Yama has said, Jagrivadbihi, Havishmadbihi, Manushyebihi, Agnihi, in this verse. So that Agni is what is here for you, sustaining your samsara here. And it is the same Agni that is going to look after you in Moksha Sthiti. So that is the highest levels of philosophy that Yama takes us, and that is what he wants us to be thinking about. Because Nachiketa, as you know, he's such an enthusiastic student. He has already demonstrated that he is a very clever bloke. And Yama is giving him more and more deeper philosophy of actually worshipping that Agni Narayana. Okay, so now what will happen is in the next class, I think we are running out of time because this is another beautiful verse full of science. And in the next, what he does is as soon as Yama talks about the fire, the Agni that we do sacrifice on, he then goes to another practical example. Every day in the morning, look up, mate, look at that sun. And every day in the evening, the sun sets. Look at this sun that sets. And he wants you to ask a fundamental scientific question here. Yatashta udeti suryaha astam yatra cha gacchati tam devaha sarve arpitaha tadu na atyeti kashtana etadvaitad. Okay. So he's going to now open up a discussion about the Surya that we see every day and how do we have to approach this Surya? What is a philosophy that we have to look at and contemplate when we every day see the sun rising and the sun setting? So what we will do next week is, I've got lots of mathematical equations here, how to calculate sunrise, sunset and all that. Hopefully it'll be interesting. So we'll take a very scientific perspective on what Yama is telling us. And in that scientific perspective, how do we capture deeper philosophy? Okay, so we'll do that next week. And then the following week, we will have to do, Sureshji, we will have to do the 13th chapter part B. So we will have to coordinate a team in about fortnight's time. So I do request volunteers to come up for this. So on that note, I'm going to close today's session. But before I close, there are in the rest of this Valli again is you know, there are some of the most important mantras are also coming here. So don't miss the next few weeks when Yama is going to be telling us about the nature of the Supreme. After he talks about sun, after he talks about fire, then he says, you know, that Supreme in all the avatars, that Supreme who is your Antaryamin, that Supreme, that the Mula Rupa, the Avatara Rupas, how do you contemplate all this? He's going to be teaching us about all this during the rest of the month. So stay with us for the next several weeks to get all this very important information that Yama is going to be teaching us all. So on that note, I'm going to close today's session and say Krishna Pranamastu, and we will take any questions and close today's session. Okay, so looks like we're all either shell-shocked or you find it quite inspirational that you're still thinking about that Agni Sukta and the Agni. So carry on thinking about this. So we will close today's session on that note.
Can I ask a question? You know,
Yeah,
the last sentence, which is etad dvaitat. So the way you've broken it is vai, as in certainly. So it is not like dvaita. So the philosophy of dvaita doesn't come from that sentence.
No, no. So etad. So you have etad and then you have tat. Yeah, etad and tat are there, and in between is why. Why is literally why is in Sanskrit, the word why, V-A-I, if you like, is stressing something. That indicates that it is a very important concept. Etad why. Yeah, so I see where you're coming from. You're looking at dvai. That is not the sandhi there, Devalji. It is etad and then why and then tat. So that why is certainly. Etad we know is etad, eshaha, ayam. That all indicates something that is very close to us. Yeah. But vayam, ahaha, and all that, tat, tvam is outside us. You know, tvam is you, tat is that. Yeah. So that is that, and etad is this, and why is certainly. So etad, that which is in, as your Antaryamin here, is the same who is going to be, he will continue as an Antaryamin there. Yeah, so that is the, I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So there is a chat, there is another, just an interesting fact. First gramophone recording was Agni Mile Purohitam. Wonderful. Thank you, Neetaji, for sharing that. Yes, beautiful, amazing, amazing piece of information, Agni Mile. So yeah, so we close on that really interesting note that next time when you hear Agni, think about all the things that we have discussed today, because Agni is not a word that needs to be underestimated. It is full of philosophy. And remember, I'm going to come back to it in the new year, that we will, once we finish Katha Upanishad, I think we should do Agni Sukta, because it is the very first Sukta of Rig Veda, and Acharya's Bhashyam is all inspiring. So we can also take we can also take other Bhashyas of Rig Veda also and look at it. Not many people have actually done Rig Bhashyam. Yeah, so we will take 1 or 2 Bhashyas and also understand what the Agnimile Purohitam is. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to close today's session. If there are no further questions, thank you very much for joining again. You have a good weekend and a good week as well. Okay, Krishna Pranamastu. So Harish, do you want to take us through Om, please? So Harish is not there. So who is going to do, shall I pick? Manjunathji, do you want to recite Om for us today, please, and close today's session?
Oh. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Bye.
Okay, Guru Gyanam.